priorities at the center of sustainable urban development. As we progress, we often forget to ask, do our policies and investments truly improve people's lives? What if we had an innovative tool to measure and guide progress, taking into account what people and communities value? Through global consultations and pioneering data collection techniques, UN Habitat is creating a new measurement tool that captures both objective and subjective factors that define quality of life. Our goal is not only to understand, but to improve urban quality of life, providing local leaders with the knowledge and tools needed for meaningful change. But this is a collective effort. Governments, cities, residents, and individuals all have a role in shaping the future of our communities to have a better economy, education, basic services, mobility, environment, housing, and culture, all supported by good governance and social cohesion practices. Join us in our mission to reimagine urban quality of life. Together, we can build a future where the planning and design of urban spaces is truly valuing what matters. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the Quality of Life Initiative global virtual event, Shaping Cities, Improving Lives. Insights, Impact, and the Road Ahead. My name's Kathleen Sullivan. I'm the Head of Communications and Advocacy for the Quality of Life Initiative, and I will be your moderator for today. We're so glad to have you here with us today, streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Feel free to wave, say hi, and drop any comments or questions in the chat throughout the event. Today's event brings together our global community to mark an important milestone for the Quality of Life Initiative and UN Habitat. Over the next 90 minutes, we will discuss the concept of quality of life and why it matters for cities. We will unveil the results from our first cycle of pilot cities, which we launched today, and our first official phase report, Quality of Life in Cities, Insights for the Quality of Life Initiative pilot phase. We'll hear directly from city leaders about what they've achieved and learned by implementing our Quality of Life Index. We'll explore the initiative's new digital tools that are helping to turn evidence into action. We'll host a short high-level conversation on the future of urban well-being, and we'll also celebrate the cities and partners driving this work forward in a final awards ceremony. Together, our goal is to deepen understanding, share insights, and build momentum that's needed to elevate quality of life as a central pillar of urban development worldwide. To open the session, I'm pleased to share with you a video message recorded by our Executive Director, Ana Claudia Rosbach.
Excellencies, honorable guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you. It is an honor to address you virtually at the Quality of Life Initiative's global event, Shaping Cities, Improving Lives, Insights, Impact, and the Road Ahead. Today, we celebrate a shared achievement. We have now expanded to more than 100 cities in over 40 countries, building momentum, partnerships, and a vibrant platform for learning and exchange. We are recognizing the work of cities that have listened to their residents, tested new approaches, and placed quality of life at the center of urban development. And we are welcoming new cities and partners who are joining this growing global community. How cities are planned, governed, and invested it determines whether they are inclusive, resilient, and livable for all. This is the purpose of the Quality of Life Initiative, implemented by UN Habitat and sponsored by the Quality of Life Program of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The initiative helps cities understand what matters most to their residents, providing the tools to translate these insights into policy and shape urban environments that support well-being and dignity. In doing so, the initiative directly advances the priorities of UN Habitat's strategic plan, which focuses on housing, land, and basic services to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, and to realize the new urban agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we are living through a global housing crisis. Nearly 3 billion people experience some form of housing inadequacy, including more than 1 billion living in informal settlements and slums. The initiative is instrumental in advancing our plan and the broader global agendas. By aligning with these priorities, it helps bridge data and policy, ensuring that improvements in quality of life are both measurable and transformative. The Quality of Life Index report on pilot cities, launched today, brings forward lessons from our first cycle. It shows what cities value and demonstrates how the index can help rethink priorities, improve public spaces, strengthen mobility, and deepen social connection. The Quality of Life Initiative is advancing a vital mindset shift, one where cities place people and their lived experiences at the center of planning and decision-making. Today marks an important milestone in this journey. I would like to express our deep appreciation to all our city partners, experts, and institutions who have helped shape this initiative, and to those joining us now, ready to take this work forward. As we look ahead, the Quality of Life Initiative will continue to grow as a global platform for learning, collaboration, and action. Thank you, and I wish you a successful event.
Thank you to our Executive Director for setting the tone for our discussion. We now move into part one of our session, dedicated to sharing an overview of the initiative and the Quality of Life Index, and revealing the results of the Quality of Life Index Pilot Cities report launched today. It is my pleasure to invite Mariah DeWine, Global Coordinator of the Quality of Life Initiative and Program Management Officer of UN Habitat, to provide an overview of the initiative and its index, followed by our data scientist, Suzanne McGuire, who will walk us through the key findings and highlights from the Pilot Cities report. Mariah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and it's really exciting to be here with you this afternoon to present the Quality of Life Initiative, who we are, what we have been doing. So let's get right to it. So the initiative was launched in 2023 through a partnership between the Quality of Life program in Saudi Arabia and UN Habitat. It began with three main ambitions. First, to develop an innovative index to measure quality of life at the city level. Second, to test and roll it out in cities worldwide. And third, to engage in advocacy for the global adoption of quality of life as a new measurement beyond GDP. And in that sense, the initiative closely connects with the SDGs and the 2030 agenda, and it does so by the production of timely and disaggregated data. It is also a tool to demonstrate how progress towards the SDG is largely impacting, tangibly impacting quality of life at the city level, and providing insights into the city's progress towards achieving selected SDG. And I think it provides a really valuable contribution to the SDGs by really reflecting on what people value most at the local level and to connect this to the global agendas. Now, we went through a very extensive process in developing the index itself, and this is because the concept of quality of life is actually quite complex. So everyone understands when you talk about the concept of quality of life, but to define it and to identify relevant indicators, that is actually quite hard. So we went through an extensive process, first by reviewing existing indices around the world, and we looked at over 50 indices. And then we engaged with through expert group meetings with the private sector, academia, city representatives, and UN agencies and so forth. And this led to the development of the index. We then piloted it and we scaled up by onboarding more cities. Now, from the onset, it was very important to us to identify the value proposition of the initiative and the index itself. So, as I mentioned, there are quite a few indices around. So what is different about the Quality of Life Index? And first, what we've really focused on is the subjective experience of people in cities. So we are not only looking at objective indicators, but also reviewing subjectively and asking people what matters to you. The second thing we did is by dividing the index in two layers. First, we have a global layer of indicators that measure aspects of quality of life that we consider universal. So for instance, I think everyone can agree that housing, for instance, is important wherever you go. However, quality of life is also strongly influenced by what matters at the local level, what is specific to the local level. So, for instance, in Medina, where we piloted the initiative, spirituality and religion is very important, and it's a very important aspect of quality of life. In other contexts, it might be the natural environment. I myself am from Amsterdam, where cultural history is very important. So we allow cities to measure these aspects of quality of life through a local layer of the index that bespoke to the local context. The third value proposition is that we are able to disaggregate collected data to foster inclusive policies. So because we work with subjective indicators and surveys, this allows us to disaggregate this data by sex, by age, by disability, for instance, and even geographically. So that provides really exciting and new insights. Lastly, we, as much as possible, try to harness new and innovative data sources. So we look at machine learning, AI insights, but also mobile phone ping data. We conduct a social media survey, utilize satellite imagery in data collection. So the structure of the index is twofold. As I just mentioned, we have a global layer of indicators and a local layer of indicators as well. We have domains that are part of the index, from basic services, governance, to education and housing, cultural and recreation. And we also have the quality of life lenses, which we developed in collaboration with our academic community of practice. And these lenses look at fairness, perception, as well as structural lenses. And not only do these lenses allow cities to identify indicators at the local level, which are inclusive and apply to all residents within the city context, it also allows cities to develop policies that are inclusive as well. Now, this is a feel, to give you a feel of our global layer of indicators. I won't go through each of them, but what you can see here is that we have the different domains represented, the different indicators. You can see that they align with SDGs, as well as the urban monitoring framework, as well as the type of data that is collected. Now, some of these indicators come from mobile phone ping data or administrative data, but we also collect them through survey data, as I mentioned. So some are objective and the others are subjective. In total, we have 28 indicators, but we also have one benchmark indicator, which is overall life satisfaction. Now, this benchmark indicator is not connected to a specific domain, but allows us to check how different domains relate to people's perceived quality of life or life satisfaction. So we're asking this question as part of the survey to city residents for them to reflect on their life satisfaction. Just waiting for the slide to load. I All right, so the local layer of the index is developed through a unique methodology that we have established through a local layer workshop. And in this workshop, we asked city representatives to work together with civil society, members of the community, academia, for instance, to identify the indicators, the issues that are locally relevant when it comes to quality of life. So this could be aspects that cities are performing well in, but also aspects of quality of life that they feel need further investigation. Now, we piloted the approach in 9 cities around the world. This includes Vancouver in Canada, Querétaro in Mexico, Quito, Ecuador. We were in Niš in Serbia, Bhubaneswar in India, Kampala in Uganda, as well as Udon Thani in Thailand and Logan in Australia. So this is a very diverse set of cities. And we just did this on purpose to really test the methodology that we developed to check whether it works in a diversity of contexts, taking into account that different cities have different capacities as well as data availability. After the testing, we developed our learnings into a comprehensive guidelines. And then we also opened up the initiative and asked different cities around the world to join us. And the demand has been really overwhelming. And this slide gives you an idea of some of the cities that have joined. Overall, we have had over 100 cities express interest in joining the initiative, and currently over 40 cities are in the process of data collection. Now, we don't only collect the data to be presented, but we also aim to provide tools to cities to do analysis of this data for policy insights. So we have developed the Quality of Life platform, and I believe my colleague Grayson will talk more about the platform later. The important point here is to emphasize that not only do we show the scores, but also offer a number of tools to cities to translate those scores into policy insights. I will stop here, and I will now hand over to my colleague Suzanne, who will talk a little bit about the evidence collected from the pilot phase in a report that she has developed. Thank you so much. And over.
Thank you, Mariah. My name is Suzanne Maguire. I'm going to share some of the data analysis and conclusions from the pilot phase of the report. Happy to be here with you. So firstly, as Mariah mentioned, we had this diverse set of cities working on the pilot phase. And this actually encompasses almost 13 million residents, reflecting a broad spectrum of income levels, as well as statistical capacities. Now, I'm going to hit you right from the start with the overall index results by domain for each pilot city. So what we see here is across the pilot cities, there is a remarkable diversity of strengths and challenges, and each one is a reflection of the unique social fabric, economic conditions, environmental pressures at play in each context. And what stands out is that many cities exhibit strong performance in some areas, despite significant constraints in others. Now, across the pilot city data, we also looked at how the different domains and indicators interact with each other. And what you're looking at here is a correlation heat map of how the domains correlate with each other. And understanding how these components tend to move, whether together or in opposite directions, can eventually give insights into underlying drivers of well-being. We do, however, note the small sample size and lack of time series data, which means that correlations that we discuss here are preliminary and show associations rather than causation. So what does our heat map show? Let's look at this. The domains governance and social cohesion emerge as the strongest correlating pair. Good urban governance, measured through indicators like trust in local government, confidence in local law, homicide rates, and more, is strongly positively correlated with social cohesion, which is measured through indicators including a sense of community belonging and having a support circle in your neighbourhood. Equally, socially fragmented or conflictual communities where people may feel disconnected from society may present barriers to governance underpinning the positive correlation. However, as we say, the causal directionality of the relationship between the domains needs to be further researched on the ground. Moving to the next correlation, education and governance also show a fairly strong positive correlation. Speculatively, it may be that higher education attainment may produce stronger political awareness, lower tolerance for corruption, or higher civic participation, for example. Conversely, cities with efficient or responsible governance may be inclined to allocate resources effectively and include educational investment as part of long-term economic development planning, for example. Housing and education also show a fairly strong positive correlation, and we relate reasons for that as well. Now, looking at this life satisfaction benchmark that Mariah introduced earlier, this is the methodological aim of this, as mentioned, was to help validate or challenge the domain level indicators and give a consistency check on the overall index findings. And here we see results ranging from around 60 to 80 out of 100, that's a normalized score, across the cities. Now, if we then look at comparing each city's life satisfaction score to their all domain average score, we see a moderate positive relationship. And this offers tentative empirical validation of the usefulness of the life satisfaction benchmark, and appears also to support the sensitivity of the index components as meaningful proxies of quality of life. We then looked at how overall life satisfaction tends to move with individual indicators. Now here we're only looking at the 28 global air indicators because they're the ones that are held constant across cities, and so we can do the calculations. So at this stage it emerges that mental wellness is very strongly correlated with overall life satisfaction. Indeed, mental wellness is almost synonymous with life satisfaction in the pilot city data. And this implies that factors like emotional well-being and stress levels are powerful determinants of how people evaluate their lives. And once basic needs are met, it's likely that strengthening mental wellness, whether directly or indirectly as a city, might well offer the greatest leverage for improving quality of life. Another strong positive correlation emerges between life satisfaction and the indicators trust in local government and the indicator confidence in local law. So it would seem that when residents believe their governments act fairly and effectively, that their rights are protected, that society is orderly, they're likely to feel safe, secure, in control, and all of this feeds into life satisfaction. Now, interestingly, at the negative end of the spectrum, the correlations are a little less intuitive. Life satisfaction shows a strong inverse relation with public transport convenience, for example. So these move in opposite directions. Speculatively, this may well be because cities with good public transport actually tend to be the larger ones with their own sets of urban stressors like congestion, pollution, anonymity, and so on. We also looked at how life satisfaction moves with GDP per capita. What we find across the pilot cities is clear. More GDP does not mean more life satisfaction. Even when we adjust GDP for purchasing power parity, there's still virtually no correlation. For instance, if we look at Bhubaneswar and Medina, they have the same life satisfaction, but a 7-fold difference in GDP per capita. The claim that quality of life is shaped by much more than economic metrics is well borne out in our pilot city data. Prosperity doesn't automatically translate to well-being. This index then can help with understanding how well-being relates to economic prosperity, with the gap between the two representing potential opportunities for better alignment. We now recall Mariah's description that each domain is scored based on a mix of objective and subjective indicators. From a sustainable urban development angle, the ideal scenario would be that objective and subjective scores for all domains would score at a high level. However, in reality, things are much more mixed. For instance, subjective indicators lag behind objective indicators in some domains, and particularly economy, housing, and environment. These gaps suggest that objective progress in these domains in particular does not necessarily translate quite so directly into improved lived experience. So policies for these domains may well need to give particularly attention not only to improving underlying conditions, but also to ensuring that the benefits of improvements are felt, visible, and equally distributed. Now, the reverse pattern emerges in the health domain by contrast. Here, subjective indicators perform stronger than objective indicators for a narrow majority of cities, 5 of the 9 falling below this diagonal alignment line in this chart. This means that health is perceived more positively than objective metrics would suggest. So what can we take away from this analysis? Firstly, cities scoring objectively well can still face subjective dissatisfaction if there is a gap between performance and expectations. Secondly, objective measures alone offer an at best partial explanation of how residents view their city's livability. And by the same token, positive perceptions may conceivably offset weak objective conditions. And this shows the importance of community sentiment in experienced quality of life, and thus in urban policy. Now, the pilot study data also lets us compare pairs of indicators that look at a particular topic from both angles, objective and subjective. And here we're taking the example of affordable housing. Across 8 of the 9 cities, the objective housing affordability indicator, which is the blue bars there, presents an overwhelmingly positive picture. On the other hand, perceived housing affordability, which is the pink bar, lags far behind for most cities, the greatest gap being seen in Nice on the left-hand side. So it's clear that the gap between objective and subjective housing affordability is often wide, and this presents an important housing and social policy issue for local authorities. And policy response design will, of course, depend on locally specific drivers at play in a given city. Moving on, we now recall that each domain is also composed of a combination of globally set indicators and locally set indicators, so the global layer and local layer. And we now compare these indicators, though caveats apply to this comparison, which can be found in the main report. So the radar diagram you're looking at now shows the all-city average score for each domain disaggregated into the global layer component and its local layer component. So what's the big picture here? Global layer indicators tend to portray a more positive picture of quality of life compared to local indicators. And this is a pattern that is remarkably consistent across the domains, the one exception being housing, for which they actually converge. So this offers a clear demonstration of the value addition of the local layer indicators, with city authorities in conversation with their stakeholders appearing to use this local layer structure to confront and identify their contextually important and challenging dynamics, rather than, for instance, to showcase their local wins. If we zoom into the local layer only for a moment, that's the orange shape, you can see that the domains of health and environment are particularly low scoring relative to the others, suggesting that these themes disproportionately present locally important gaps in cities, which stand to be levelled up to enhance quality of life. Now we can have a look at how the index data is structured along the 2 axes we've just mentioned, the objective, subjective, and the global, local, might be looked at by a city to better understand the dynamics of a domain of interest to it. So this chart takes the example of housing in Logan. So the objective score for housing is very high, it's 91 out of 100. While subjective score is relatively low at 35. If we zoom into the detail, we can see that the objective score is raised up by good performance on housing affordability and spatially distributed social housing indicators. The subjective score average, however, is pulled down by the indicator perceived housing affordability, in direct contrast to the corresponding objective quantitative indicator. So this city authority may well consider further diagnosing the perception gap related to affordable housing, like what is the geography, what is the age, what is the gender, disability profile of those perceiving the gaps. And those kinds of pieces of information can be partially gained from the survey information. A city authority may seek to identify localised hotspots of unaffordability that a quantitative city average may miss. It may assess if the supply of desired housing types is adequate. For example, is housing the right location? Does it cater for the right household size? Or assess the level of awareness of assistance programme among targeted sections of the community. And such approaches might lead to impacts on the ground which enhance quality of life. Now, taking another quick example of Kampala's economy before we move on to recommendations and conclusions. This shows for Kampala that there's a fairly strong objective indicator score. This is the blue line. It's around 65 out of 100. And this is raised up by good performance on unemployment and very good performance on poverty relative to the national poverty line. A third objective indicator, which is income inequality, scores quite poorly, about 32 out of 100, reflecting that income is distributed unevenly among the city's community. The subjective score, the pink line, is pulled down by business cost perception, but also by ease of finding a job. So a city authority may well interpret this data with the benefit of local knowledge and may think about interventions such as lowering the real cost of doing business or improving perceptions of business costs, such as publishing data on taxes, utilities, business setup time, or encouraging affordable workspaces. It may also focus on job matching, making it easier through centralized job platforms, employer partnerships for trainings, or otherwise investing in targeted upskilling. And based on the spatial disaggregation of responses to the survey question regarding the ease of finding a job, the city may consider public transport investments to better link homes to jobs. We're very quick to say here that all of these speculations are just that, and interpretations of the policy responses must come through the city stakeholders. Now, I have one slide on recommendations and one on conclusions. So the report makes recommendations for cities, policy and donor communities, statistical entities, and indeed for UN Habitat itself. Here we just mentioned recommendations for cities. The first is cities are encouraged to, the slide will come on now, cities are encouraged to use the index to reveal gaps between objective and subjective indicators, pinpointing lagging domains and exploring causes, whilst highlighting leading domains and leveraging successful approaches, as well as tracking emerging trends over time. Cities are also encouraged to use the index to activate local insight, bringing communities together to interpret results and uncover context-specific drivers of quality of life to inform locally resonant policy responses. Finally, cities are invited to connect globally, to participate in the global quality of life network, sharing insights and drawing on collective data and best practice. We now leave you with a few overarching conclusions. The first is that the data suggests the index provides a feasible and reliable method to measure quality of life. Secondly, we have noted that quality of life is not necessarily connected to GDP, offering strong new empirical evidence for the beyond GDP perspective. Finally, the integration of the global and local layer indicators along with the subjective and objective measures adds significant value and provides cities with unique and context-relevant insights in a globally comparable domain structure. Thank you, and back to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Mariah and Suzanne, for that comprehensive overview and findings from our report launched today. You can find the link to the report in the LinkedIn event chat. We will take questions at the end of the program, so please put them in the chat on LinkedIn if you have any. Next, I'd like to move on into our panel discussion with our city representatives who recently completed implementation of the Quality of Life Index. We're delighted to bring together cities with fresh perspectives to share on what it's been like to implement the Quality of Life Index this year. Today's conversation is designed to highlight lessons learned and how cities are using the index to shape long-term strategies for improving quality of life. We're joined today by representatives from Kragujevac, Macca, and Amman, each bringing fresh perspectives from their recently completed index process. We'll also explore insights gained, emerging policy impacts, and shifts in thinking that have emerged along the way. We'll begin with some questions on the initial insights cities gained when working with the index, then move into how results are influencing policy and planning, and finally, we'll close with some reflections on the most surprising or meaningful moments in the process. But before we begin our panel discussion, I'd like to share a video message by Annalisa Boni, Deputy Mayor of Bologna, Italy, who couldn't join us live today for this panel, but really wanted to be a part of this milestone event. The video message really captures why the city has decided to take part in our initiative and how Bologna intends to weave impacts from the index into their broader vision for a more livable, inclusive city.
Hello, and thank you for inviting us to this great event. As Deputy Mayor of the City of Bologna in charge of climate action and many other things, I have overseen our participation in the Quality of Life Initiative, and I've seen that thanks to this work, the City of Bologna has completed its first Quality of Life Index. We find it extremely useful because it's the most comprehensive photography snapshot ever produced of how people who live in Bologna experience their daily life. And it's the result of combining objective data with residents' perceptions, because the index integrates the universal well-being indicators that you know well with locally selected measures. And therefore, these are tailored to the context and to our DNA and to our specific priorities in the city. And so it's clear that we do carry out surveys, and we have carried out surveys that are similar to this, and we make many efforts aligned with the United Nations, SDGs. But this exercise has been an extremely valuable and precious complement to our work, because our goal is to make Bologna a dynamic, inclusive, sustainable reality, city, community, in which everyone can enjoy a high quality of life. For us, quality of life is an important, really, target. And this new index gives us a deeper understanding of, how residents experience our city, and helps us develop policies that can improve their well-being and their well-being of everyone. And finally, I think we also like the idea to be part of a bigger movement, through this Quality of Life Initiative. We feel that we can contribute to a more international group of experts and policymakers and people, so an international movement that can improve, that is aimed at improving well-being and sustainability in cities across the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Annalisa Boni from Bologna. And now let's turn to our esteemed panelists here in the room to explore their first impressions and the most valuable insights that emerged as cities reviewed their results from the index. We'd like to welcome Faran Chabu, Advisor, Strategy and Master Plan of the Royal Commission for Macca City, Branislav Antonik, Director of the Urban Observatory in Kragujevac, and Akram Kresat, Director of Amman's Urban Observatory of the Greater Amman Municipality. Welcome. So thank you all for being with us here today. We've got a lot of great questions to ask you. And our first question is, how you recently completed the Quality of Life Index? Looking back at the process, what were the most valuable insights or discoveries that emerged when you first reviewed your findings? And what were any findings that validated existing institutions? I'd like to first give the floor to Akram in Amman.
Hello, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you for being here, Akram. What can you share with us today?
Good. Good.
We seem to be having technical difficulties.
Thank you for your
Akram.
question and thank you for having me. And I'm Akram Khaisa, Director of Amman Observatory. Can I proceed?
Akram, I think
Just to answer
a
your
little
question.
bit.
I think it's a bad connection, but I will try to answer the question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our work in completing the quality of life index for Amman gave us many important insights. The index helped us understand the city more deeply and see the areas that need to improve and work with the great efforts to make the improvements that citizen can touch it. It allowed us to evaluate the city performance, because in Amman Urban Observatory, we are working in producing an urban indicators which measure the performance of the city. This initiatives gives us a clear and structured way to work in this. As you know, Amman city facing so many challenges related to climate change, like flash floods and heat waves. So our joining to these initiatives make like a framework for us in Amman city, just to shape and to figure out where's the area that we can work more and translating insights to actions. And this index helped us to focus on clear priorities for future actions and our efforts and resources more effective. It has become an essential and to support. It's like a tool just to support us and support the decision making, data-based planning. We improve the quality of life. We try to work on the quality of life for residents in sustainable way. Amman city, the first Arab city that conducted the first our second year. So we are working with full alignment on SDGs localization, our indicator, and to focus on the areas that citizens are through these questions. We just find some areas that we have to make more focus. Through this process, we are able to strengthen monitoring also and evaluation to set like a solid foundation for development of the city, enable make better decision and create a real positive impact on people's lives. In Amman city we have 4.4 million residents, and we have some challenges regarding also refugees, urban refugees in the city, some stresses on infrastructure and the services. We update our resilience plan, we update our GCAP plan, and now we are trying to see these insights and translate to policies.
It looks like we lost Akram there. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone, and great to hear what we could on the alignment with the voluntary local reviews and the different insights they've gleaned from the process. I think right now I will pivot to turn to hear from Farhan in Makkah the same question. Your city also recently completed the Quality of Life Index. Looking back at the process, what would you say were the most valuable insights or discoveries that emerged from Makkah when you reviewed your results? And were there any findings that challenged assumptions or validated existing institutions for Mecca?
Thank you. I think the Quality of Life initiative is quite comprehensive, right? And I think it gave us an opportunity to utilize a framework, and within that framework, understand where are we already performing quite strongly and where do we need to improve. I think in certain areas, building on what Suzanne presented earlier, certain domains were validated. For example, social cohesion, governance came out quite strongly in Mecca City. However, there were certain domains where we were somewhat underperforming. However, probably where the most insights lay were in the data itself. And I think through the Quality of Life initiative, there was a particular focus on leveraging different data sets to guide the insights that would materialize. What do we mean by this? One particular example is in the mobility domain. So we had a number of indicators within the mobility domain, some of which were subjective, some of which were objective. When we interviewed the residents of Mecca, the perception of public transportation, for example, was considered to be very high. However, when we looked at the underlying data, whether it was public transportation accessibility or public transportation infrastructure on a ratio basis, that told a very different story. And I think the underlying data that we use in order to guide our decisions, what it highlighted is that it's very critical because specifically in the case of Mecca, a spiritual city, the residents of Mecca often speak very favorably about the city, given the spiritual attachment. However, as planners, sometimes we need to look beyond the subjectivity in order to ensure that what we are delivering for the city when we plan 5, 10, 15 years ahead goes sometimes above and beyond even what our residents expect of us. So even if the residents sometimes are saying that they're satisfied with a particular infrastructure or social service, it's very important that we look at other data sets to really validate that, to make sure that we don't have a skewed perception of the status quo. And I strongly believe it's our duty as planners to ensure that we really challenge the data. Without doing so, we risk limiting our ambition and delivering. And in order to deliver true advancement for the city, I think we have to be thorough and comprehensive. And I think utilizing the different data sets that the Quality of Life proposed allowed us to do precisely that.
Thank you very much, Farhan, for sharing those reflections. I'd now like to turn to discuss a little bit more how these findings are already influencing conversations on policy planning and investments beyond what you just mentioned. I think we have lost Akram from Amman. So I will pivot to Branislav from Kragujevac for our next question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well, Branislav.
Great. So greetings from Kragujevac, from Serbia. The questions, let's say, we had exactly 1 month ago, we had the final meeting about the quality of life at local level with stakeholders, and we got some first inputs how it can be utilized at local level. The first option, actually, the most reactions were on these extreme results, if I can say, the best ones and the worst ones than expected. So in the case, for example, the culture and the culture institutions, they were not so, let's say, the values obtained were not so good as we thought. And there was a lot of discussion about how to improve something like this and how to customize the local budget for the next year. Because in global levels, we actually compared the values with other cities of the similar size in Serbia. So actually, Kragujevac, even by budget, was not so good comparing with them. And it was, let's say, the main decision at local level to expand, to improve the budget for the culture for the next year. On the other side, we got really good, unexpectedly good results for the PM particles regarding the environment, the quality of air. And it was discussion that it's because of the summer, it was calculated during the summer. We have the heating season during the winter time, and it should be somehow customized to, let's say, to add the locations, the customer locations, which were more in line with the current state at the city. So basically, these extreme values, extreme indicators were the most striking ones, which actually open the doors how to customize the local policy and the local budget, the next budget for the city next year. So it was the most interesting thing from these first reactions. That's it.
Thank you very much, Branislav, for sharing those reflections and how it's been extremely helpful for you and guided your planning. I see Akram, very happy that you could rejoin us. We'd love to hear from your perspective in Amman. Now that the results are in hand, how have the index results begun influencing discussions around policy, planning, or investment? And are there specific areas where the index has already helped guide or reshaped your priorities for the coming year?
Yeah, thank you. The results of Quality of Life Index become an important tool for us in our discussion, planning and investment. This initiative helped us and focus on discussions the areas that truly matter to the residents. The results highlighted the area needed more attention and more focusing, which has helped us to recognize the priorities and develop like a clear action plan coming year. This index also support that driven. We are in Amman Urban Observatory to collect the data, the raw data from stakeholders in Amman city. So it supports us in data-driven planning, providing like evidence-based reports and providing an opportunity for discussion for future projects and making decisions about investment and urban programs. Within this, we can allocate resources effectively and to ensure that our interventions create a positive impact on people's life. In Amman City, we adopt a participatory approach, citizen-centric. Our management all the time push us that we need to raise more and more the quality of life, improve the services in the city. So I think this quality of life initiatives shape for us like a framework that we can, or like a roadmap for us just to become like a central tool in decision making and ensuring our policies and are not only responsive to current needs, but also guided by a comprehensive understanding of the city's priorities and challenges.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Akram. It's great to hear perspective from Amman and that you think this is a central planning tool that can be integrated across and with focus on participatory approach. Obviously, we feel the same way, but it's great to hear how it's being used at a city level and how it's being interpreted and what the long-term use will be for the city. Moving on, we have another question that we'd like to direct to Branislav and Kragujevich. During the journey from onboarding through data analysis, was there a moment of surprise or a shift in thinking or learning that stood out as particularly meaningful for Kragujevich?
Again, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. There was many such things. I think that one of the most striking moments, it's actually when we during the process of developing local layering indicators, because they were our own, and we opted to compare, in most of them, compare the city of Kragujevac with cities of similar size in Serbia. So not to compare the other ones which are maybe close to Kragujevac but very small municipalities, very small towns, but those ones who are, let's say, similar by size of population, to have the similar mindset in behind. During this process, in comparison of the values decided to be, let's say, compared by these indicators, we realized actually that the city of the size really matters. So I think that it is something that not just the duty for us who participate in the quality of life initiative, but also for the main central office to somehow to to balance the indicators to be also very suitable for small cities and towns, like the case the quality of education, of the offer of the schools and something like this. So for us, it's actually realization that that was also in discussion of the last meeting with the stakeholders. Some of them were from nearby municipalities and the towns, that actually it works well for the bigger cities in most of the indicators, but in some indicators there is huge gap between big and small cities, regardless of their position in the country, or is the country well developed or not, or whatever. So basically some elements need to be customized to better address the small size settlements, cities, towns, and so on. So that was maybe for this moment.
Thank you, Branislav. Anything else to add?
I don't know. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Thank you. I think for our final question, we'd like to turn back to Maka on looking ahead. We'd like to hear how Maka is envisioning using the data and the platform to support long-term planning, and how will Maka track progress over the next few years? What would you say to other cities considering joining the initiative now with this in mind?
Thanks, Kathleen. So we'd probably break that question down into two, right? So in terms of how we envision moving forward with the index and the initiative, firstly, what we've done so far with the quality of life in the United Nations for us is the first step of the process. The onboarding, setting in place a baseline, setting in place a target for each of the indicators, whether it's global or local, within the quality of life index. That is the planning aspect. The second step for us now is really setting in place a monitoring framework and integrating that monitoring framework in the way that we as a city authority deliver results for the residents of Mecca. So what we're currently doing, and I can highlight some examples on this, is we're actually assessing we have 44 indicators within the Mecca City Index for Quality of Life. We're assessing each indicator to really answer the question, if we look forward 5 years and we look at the pipeline of projects that are currently coming up, are we going to be able to deliver on the target we've set out for a given indicator? And if the answer is no, then our analysis as a next step is, well, what do we need to do in terms of projects across the ecosystem in order to ensure that the target will be achieved moving forward? And in some cases, of course, we can't always assess the impact, in which case we need to do further analysis. But the first step is really having this monitoring framework in place so that we can preempt any gaps that we may face on the targets that we've set in the index. So we think that, of course, onboarding is naturally going to be the first step, but the monitoring framework, if anything, is actually more critical, so that we can assess the results on an annual basis, because it's through the monitoring framework that we can enable a sense of accountability. And it's that accountability that translates into results on the quality of life angle. Now, in terms of the second component of your question, I think in terms of advice to others that may be considering joining the Quality of Life Initiative, I think as city authorities, the residents of the cities are our primary audience that we are serving. In order to effectively serve those residents, we need to make sure, and I think it's imperative, that we have a plan and we have a strong and comprehensive framework for the way forward. And what the Quality of Life Initiative is offering through this index is a starting point for precisely that.
Thank you so much, Farhan, for sharing that feedback. It's really nice to hear specifically how you're using that and what kind of steps that Mecca is taking in a very detailed process moving forward to integrate those as KPIs that are measurable. So unfortunately, I think that's all we have time today before we move on to the next segment of our program. I'd like to thank all of our panelists. Thank you, Farhan from Mecca, and Akram from Amman, and Branislav from Kragujevac for sharing all of your insights and perspectives from having recently completed the Quality of Life Index. Your insights underscore just how multidimensional and dynamic quality of life truly is, and how powerful it can be when cities have evidence-based tools to guide their priorities. We appreciate your openness, your leadership, and the commitment that each of you have brought to improving the lives of your residents. Thank you again for being with us today. We will now move into our next session where we will showcase how the Quality of Life Initiative is turning data into actionable knowledge and practical solutions for cities.
Hi, everybody. I'm Grayson Bass. I lead the innovation and product team for the Quality of Life Initiative. You've heard about all the really interesting ways people are learning from this and the great work that Susan has done and that the cities, of course, have done to be able to leverage this. This is where we show off this work. So I want to show you just kind of a front page, which I think everybody gets to see. And then I want to take you quickly behind the scenes before I turn it over to my colleague, Andrew. When you land at the QOLimpact.com, you get to see this fun globe. We wanted to have a little bit of play that we could kind of use so that when people showed up, they could kind of go in and be able to look at it, to be able to learn about the platform, to be able to go and actually see and sign up and understand what quality of life is. As you've heard today, I think if we ask anyone what quality of life is, they can tell you from their perspective, but what does that really mean for different communities? Well, that varies. And I think that's where a lot of the challenge of the initiative has come, is then how do we take that and then show that uniqueness of each city? So I always use Logan when I present because they've kindly allowed me to do that every time. And you can see what we lovingly call the Pokemon page. This allows us to kind of look and compare quality of life, the index at the global level, to what that looks like, how it's related to the various SDGs, and what is really interesting about each city, kind of to give an overview of an idea. What is the strongest domain that they have, which in Logan, which is to be expected if you know about it, is a rich culture and recreation. You get a quick snapshot of the life satisfaction, which we've learned from this report that really is in line with how perception is in communities of what quality of life is. And then the ability to go and look at what are the various global indicators, but also what's important locally. So you can see that in the local economy, looking for job density, looking for nighttime expenditure leakage, looking for in the environment, how the land works, looking at emissions. These are what's important in the city of Logan. I told you I'd take you quickly behind the scenes. We understand that as a team, it's our job to help cities become data rich. And if they're data rich, then that really gives them the idea to know what to do. So we wanted to kind of highlight where there was the opportunity to positively impact quality of life. We use an AI generated tool to identify potential root causes as well as recommendations that can help. There's a tool for them to manage so that they can actually see the various global, local indicators so that they can add data and update as they go along in their quality of life journey as a city. And we've also created a tool for them that allows them to learn and to kind of get what we call historical data that is used through a combination of synthetic data, because obviously this initiative is just launching, but we thought it would be useful to then be able to actually have them to look over time and have an analysis of what quality of life could look like and how that's improving in their community. We also created a knowledge base, and I'm going to turn that over to my colleague Andrew to talk a little bit more about that, that they can then search using natural language, using to actually understand how they could improve. So if they do see that there is a gap that they'd like to improve, then you can say, how can I improve governance and environment? Well, it'll give you an answer, it'll give you references, and allow you to follow up with questions. We've also documented a map so that we can actually see where various aspects of quality of life look in the community. This gives city planners as well as residents a quick overview of what's available in their community. And we've created, which is going to launch later this week, what we call a World Intelligence Knowledge Map, which is case studies that we've collected from around the world. This is going to be available for everyone. That then allows us to look at and understand information that is the same that the cities get, but this is now available for everyone else. And I think that the best person to talk about how knowledge works would be my colleague Andrew. He's the one who is responsible for the knowledge and all the cool publications that we're doing. So I'd like to turn it over to him real quick. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Grayson. Yeah, I think I'll kind of just talk for a minute or two as kind of a transition between what you were referring to and our next little session here, which is going to be a chat between two very important members of the Quality of Life Initiative. So I mean, just to kind of reflect a bit on all of those tools that you were showing, the AI assisted ones and others, what's really important kind of from the knowledge perspective is kind of taking into consideration what goes into those different tools. What are they crawling through in order to come out with the different root cause policy recommendations and so forth. And so a lot of the work that we've done has been in collaboration with a really fantastic group of representatives from across a number of universities around the world. And what we wanted to kind of look at is, what do we mean when we talk about a quality of life approach, when we talk about, putting people-centered development kind of at the center of the urban development agenda. And so what we did is kind of look through what's already been done, hundreds and hundreds of different research papers on different aspects of quality of life, and pulling in representatives from universities that are not just kind of urbanists, but also psychologists and public health specialists and food security experts and so on and so forth, in order to come up with a kind of conceptual framework to understand what we mean in the Quality of Life Initiative when we're talking about a quality of life approach. And so this conceptual framework we've developed, you see on the screen here, is a number of lenses through which we can talk about these different domains of urban life, whether we're talking about housing policy or education, environment, governance, so on and so forth. So how can we talk about those urban domains through a number of structural considerations, affordability, adequacy, but then how does that get filtered through different notions of, who's included, who's excluded, who's part of the decision-making process, who's not, opportunity, and then finally, very importantly, as we've heard already, around what that actually means in terms of the lived experience of individuals and how they perceive their life in terms of, the kind of connection and belonging to a community, perceived safety, which is very different than objective safety, which we have kind of more on the objective, on the structural side of things. And so what's nice about this framework as well is that it's flexible in the sense that some cities may want to enter from kind of the fairness perspective, others already from the perception, others sticking to more of the around the structural aspects and access to basic services and so on and so forth. And what this framework has allowed us to do is ground our knowledge work in something that is concrete and verified and legitimized by this group, from this community of practice of academics that we've been working with. And so when we're looking at what kind of documentation or guidance or case studies or toolkits that you want to put onto the digital platform that Grayson was just talking about, we can kind of use this as a filtering system or as a kind of criteria system for identifying that knowledge, which again, from the perspective of this initiative, is really getting at that kind of human first vision of urban development. So with that, I'm going to actually pass it over to the next session, which this segues into very nicely, because one or two of the people who have been really, really involved in this knowledge dimension and specifically in developing that framework on lenses are Eduardo and Wendy who I will give it back to Kathleen to give a much more proper introduction to. But it's been a pleasure working with them and with everyone else. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Andrew and Grayson, for your excellent contributions to the Quality of Life Initiative's innovation and knowledge sharing execution. We would now like to invite Wendy Purcell, Vice Chair and Professor in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health and Justice at Rutgers University, and Eduardo Moreno, Senior Advisor to the Quality of Life Initiative and UN Habitat, onto the virtual stage for a high-level conversation on the future of urban well-being. Eduardo, Wendy, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. First of all, my warm congratulations to Habitat and the Quality of Life Program Center for convening this important global dialogue. And of course, my greetings to this extraordinary audience that is connected from all over the world. It's interesting to notice that only a few years ago, the global pandemic suddenly altered the way we live, we work, we relate to each other. The pandemic forced us apart physically, but at the same time accelerated the level of digital connectivity that today allow us to gather from different continents, cultures, and time zones. This inherent form of global connection has become one of the most powerful and unexpected legacies of the crisis. And at the same time, it has reshaped profoundly our understanding of quality of life, revealing that well-being is not only about where we live, but also how we stay connected, how resilient we are, how inclusivity is moving forward together, and most fundamentally, as we have seen with these cases of different cities, how quality of life is featuring and changing in different contexts. I had the privilege to serve as senior advisor to the Quality of Life Initiative, representing UNDP in this global effort, and I was closely connected to the early conception and development of this. Before that, I was in UN Habitat for 25 years, where I concluded my tenure as Director of Research and Innovation. And most of my work there focused on strengthening the evidence base for urban policy. This included the design and deployment of major global measurement frameworks, the SLAM Index, my contribution to the SDG architecture, the creation of the Urban Prosperity Index, all with a single objective, to link metrics to real transformation on the ground. Today, I serve as co-director from the World Urban Pavilion in Toronto. This is a global platform advancing innovation, knowledge, and urban solutions. And with this introduction, I'm very pleased to present to you Professor Wendy Purcell. She's the Vice Chair and Professor in the Department of Environment and Occupational Health and Justice at the Rutgers School of Public Health. Wendy is widely recognized for her global leadership in sustainability, in health, in higher education, in governance, and institutional transformation. Her career spans from Harvard University, the UK government, National Health Service, the United Nations University Council, and also leading international research networks. Many of us, and perhaps also of you, know Wendy because of her pivotal role in the Quality of Life Initiative in this community of practice. This is a global academic network that brought together experts from diverse disciplines and is still operating. Wendy joined us in Toronto in 2023, and since then she has been a pillar of this group and has led the development of the Quality of Life Lenses framework that Andrew just explained to you. Her work is anchoring the intellectual foundation of this initiative. She has also been working in these lenses: adequacy, inclusion, opportunity, belonging, and a research paper is being peer-reviewed for publication on this. Thank you, Wendy, for all this work, for your conceptual progress on quality of life. It is really a privilege to have you with us to explore the future of well-being. And I would like to start by asking you one question. Why urban well-being now? Through your career, you have helped large systems navigate transformational change. But tell us from your perspective, why has urban well-being become such an urgent global priority today, especially as a new generation of people-centric metrics is gaining action? What does that mean to imagine the future of cities through the lenses of quality of life that were explained before, focusing not only on growth, on infrastructure, on economics, but in this wider perspective of quality of life? Wendy, please explain to us.
Thank you. Thank you for such a generous introduction. I really appreciate it. It's been a privilege to work alongside such a global group of interdisciplinary scholars and academics and practitioners. But you touched on, I think, a really important point. I think COVID, was a kind of global wake up to the kind of paucity of experience in cities. So I think there was definitely deep collective learning that went on during the COVID-19 pandemic. That lockdown forced us to kind of rethink at a very personal level our quality of life. But I think on top of that, we have layering of the kind of extreme weather events around the climate crisis. We have the continued migration of people to urban spaces. So we have kind of a suite of forces coming together, which are giving us insight into how we live our lives and whether we want to think beyond just simply surviving, which clearly was a focus for us during COVID, but how do we thrive? How do we realize our greater kind of purpose and human potential? So I think that has been a major driver. And I think we've recognized, as the pandemic showed us, that there is a connection among a suite of different levers that kind of come together. So an intervention in one area has a ripple effect in others. And I think that was reminding us that some of our old thinking, if I could put it like that, has been very siloed. And so when we think about housing, we may think about housing as a silo, but then we think about that security that it gives and how that impacts on educational opportunities, on health and well-being, on employment status. So we started to think beyond silos and in an intersectional way. And I think that's the thing that the Quality of Life Initiative is bringing us. It's bringing us this way to think in systems at those domains that we've heard about, but actually take that sense of how are they connected one to another. And I think rather than thinking about well-being as a kind of status or a state of being, we're seeing it as being an outcome of a suite of these different indicators coming together. And we've already seen from, I think, the city data that's been presented today that people have a tolerance maybe for transport issues, if there's deep cultural engagement. So they're trading at an individual level, but also collectively among these different domains. So you get this kind of life satisfaction outcome is an outcome of a whole suite of different indicators. And so I think we've seen over this period that rather than thinking about surviving, we're now focusing on thriving. That sense of quality of life is really about that human flourishing. It's about how do I realize my higher potential? How do I really think about that? And so the lenses approach that you've heard about, that we've been conceptualizing through this, extraordinary community of practice, really draws on something. I love this quote from Proust. I'll just read it. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And I think this Quality of Life Initiative is giving us new eyes. That's exactly why we use this idea of lenses. How do we see differently if we position quality of life as an outcome measure, how do we think about the structural issues that you've heard about? How do we then think about, the fairness, who's participating, who's involved? And then we think about our perception. How do we feel? I mean, it seems to me quite extraordinary to come to a position quite late in the day when we think about what is the true lived experience. And that's really what we're asking here. So I think the wellbeing access has allowed us to think out of silos. It's much more intersectional. And it has allowed us to think about that lived experience of an individual, but in a societal, in a collective, at that city level. And I think that sense of the lenses that we're using is giving us new insights. We heard that from those 3 examples about how they are seeing differently, how they're having new insights, how they're reprioritizing. The Maca example was, really insightful to think we're now using it in a forecasting way. We're using it as a scenario tool to say, are the things that we want to achieve, are the projects that we have on our list going to get us there? So I think there's something very fundamental in this shift as we talk about quality of life. And I really hand it back to you to think through, how might that show up elsewhere now as we start to use this tool in a very practical way. And that's what's exciting for me as an academic, is to see this conceptual, theoretical really now playing out in these sort of cities that are coming to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Through your explanation, we understand that quality of life helps us to move away from the tyranny of silence, to adopt a more integrated approach. Also, and I like a lot, and let me quote you, it's not a new landscape, it's new eyes through the lenses to see structural changes and to see opportunities in cities. Something that connects a lot to what you said is the presentation of these 3 cities, in which we heard the divergence of at the same time of adopting people-centered systems. In this panel, we understood that cities are really rediscovering the power of listening, stories, memories, life experiences, and engines of transformation, all these processes that are human-centered. Tell me something, Wendy, how essential is community voice in shaping a quality life with real community influence and with real shared decisions being brought by communities?
Yeah, it's a really important question. And I heard a beautiful framing of listening. They talked about that listening is love. And so there's something about listening which is honoring other. There's a humility that goes with listening, which is I am listening to learn. And I think that's the shift. I think previously we may have been in the kind of transactional, we'll do a bit of community engagement, we'll take some surveys, and we were listening to fix. And now we're listening to learn because we're genuinely moving into transformative spaces. We are learning our way in to thinking through what is required for us to achieve betterment. How can we adapt to the changing kind of crises that are coming up at us? How do we really lean into and learn what it means to deliver equitable outcomes? And so listening is not a passive thing, it's an active thing. And to listen truly to the lived experience and the stories of people is an act of love. And I think if we are truly to honor other as self and have that sense of humility, we need to listen and we need to create spaces where people feel safe to uplift their lived experience. And that includes those who are in informal or the informality sector. And we need to think about how can we work with other in spaces of co-creation, so that rather than thinking, we are in government or we're in industry or in academia and we have the answers and we will go and do something to a place, we are now inviting place and the people in that place to say what is needed from your perspective, and really leaning in to learning from the community. And so rather than doing something to, we are now doing something with. So I've used the framing of the power of with, so WITH, so working with groups, so that we create a kind of vehicle that holds all the different voices. And one of the things that's been missing from that vehicle is a shared communication tool. And I think the quality of life framing now brings into that language, which can be shared language. It's a shared language tool. And so it's much more intuitive as an index. I can understand some of the words in that in a way that applies to me and my place here, irrespective maybe of levels of education or levels of insight or even levels of security when we're thinking about more precarious or vulnerable groups. And so that power of with is really what I think we're exploring here, is how do we bring in the very people to whom we wish to work with and to shape a future with, to be part of the conversation, not a recipient of the conversation, but a true participant in that conversation, and create that space to have that conversation, to listen with love, to listen to learn, and to learn our way in then to what is required to move us from where we are to that next step. And so in many of these spaces, we're thinking about how do we exist outside our government silo, our government planning silo, our business silos, our development silos? How do we come together in a shared space, use a shared language like the quality of life language, and actually then think about the broader global agenda of creating a world that leaves no one behind, and localize that in a meaningful way, using the priorities of the very people concerned, that co-creation space. And so I think that is how we are moving from a kind of transactional, we'll do something to you, we see the neighborhood, we have these insights from our distant spaces, to actually coming really into the local space, listening to learn, and using a language that is much more intuitive when we think about quality of life and the definitions that an individual holds within that quality of life space. And I think that's a major sort of advance into how we deliver betterment with people through this quality of life agenda.
Thank you very much, Wendy, for your wide responses and comments. All this is bringing us to a very simple truth, I think. Quality of life is not a statistic, it's a collective commitment, it's a collective process, it's a shared knowledge, and as you said, it's a power of wit, it's finding this common language. It is clear with the presentation with your comments that cities rise when people are heard, when data is guiding decisions, and when systems are evolving for equity. All these reflections are reminding us that the future of urban well-being is being built locally, in the streets, in the neighborhoods, with the people. Cities are therefore not just implementing the index, they are redefining what is possible when we measure what truly matters. Quality of life in this exercise is evolving from insight to evidence to concrete action. Thanks again, Wendy. Your insights is leading us naturally to our next segment, where we are celebrating how cities are expressing quality of life through stories, creativity, and live experience. I'm referring to the award session, and I'm passing again to Kathleen.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Wendy and Eduardo, for this rich and inspiring exchange. Your reflections have brought us back to the heart of today's gathering, which is that quality of life is not just something we measure, it's something we cultivate, protect, and elevate together. This makes it a perfect moment to turn to someone who has been instrumental in shaping that vision within the initiative. It is my pleasure to invite Nora Ali Yusuf to help us bridge today's insights with the celebration still ahead. Nora has played a central role in launching and supporting the initiative's mission, from translating the conceptual foundations and in articulating why quality of life matters not only as a metric, but as a shared vision. Nora, over to you. Excuse me. We're having some technical difficulties. We'll just go back for a second. Nora, I think you may have been muted. Can you check your sound and come back in? And
no sound?
We've got you now, Nora. We've got you now. Please go ahead.
It wouldn't be a virtual event without some technical hiccups. So thank you. Thank you once again, Kathleen, and thank you, Wendy and Eduardo, for setting the stage. I must confess to everyone that I'm feeling very emotional today with this gathering of so many friends and colleagues from around the world. Thank you for your support, and more importantly, thank you for your friendship, which will hopefully be everlasting into the future. Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 set priorities that revolve around our people, and for nearly a decade has put quality of life at the core of its goals, focusing on both livability and lifestyle aspects of quality of life domains. In essence, taking a holistic approach. Some of the goals were realized very quickly, and others are being realized over a longer time horizon, and that's what brings us here to today. Over the past 3 years, 3 years ago, not over the past 3 years, 3 years ago, we kickstarted this really very special initiative where we collectively agreed that it would embody 3 important traits: innovation, to be human-centric, and inspirational. And I feel that we did a tremendous job in honoring that pact that we made 3 years ago. COLI, as we humbly call it, has evolved into far more than a measurement framework. It has grown into a living community of practice, a collective of city officials, researchers, civil society partners, practitioners, united by a shared conviction that quality of life must sit at the heart of the decision-making process. At its core, the Quality of Life Index is not merely a technical instrument. It is a catalyst. It is a place for us to convene, for dialogue, for exchange, for reflection, and ultimately for progress. It creates the space for people to be heard, for governments to pause and reflect, and for institutions to come together with clarity, trust, and shared purpose. It helps cities ask the most important questions. Where are we today? How did we get here? What truly matters to our communities? And how do we design policies that respond to the lived experience and not just to data points? Today, we celebrate the cities, the partners who have embraced this journey with courage, creativity, and deep commitment, many of which I am humbled to now call friends. Each recognition we present today is not simply an award, it is a testament to leadership, to partnership, and to a shared belief that better data guided by shared values can help build better cities and better lives. A heartfelt thank you to everyone who has contributed to this journey. I'm a different person because of this journey, and I look forward to what the future holds together as a collective. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Nora, for that lovely segue. I'm happy to move on into our final segment of our live event and celebration, our awards. This award segment is our opportunity to honor the cities and partners whose dedication, innovation, and collaboration have been central to advancing the Quality of Life Initiative. Over the past cycle, dozens of cities, institutions, and partners have contributed to building a more evidence-based, people-centered vision of urban development. And today we recognize those who went above and beyond, whether by pioneering the index, scaling their work with remarkable commitment, telling their story in new powerful ways, or advancing the knowledge and digital foundations of the initiative. We have structured the awards into several categories, each reflecting a different type of contribution to our shared mission. We have the Pioneers Award, honoring the cities that boldly paved the way as the first pilots, helping shape and test the index in real urban contexts. We have the Glow Up Award, celebrating cities that completed both the global and local layers of the index with exceptional engagement, turning ambition into measurable action. We have the Storytelling Award, recognizing cities that transform their quality of life journey into compelling narratives that elevate local voices and inspire others. We have the Digital Excellence Award, highlighting a partner whose technological expertise significantly expanded what the initiative can achieve. We have the Knowledge Award, acknowledging academic partners whose research strengthened the initiative's methodological backbone and evidence base. And we have the Connector Award, recognizing civil society partners who played a pivotal role in bringing cities into the initiative, fostering collaboration, and anchoring the index in local realities. Together, these awards honor leadership, creativity, research, excellence, and the spirit of collaboration that makes this initiative thrive. With that, let's begin our celebration. The first recognition we would like to present is the Pioneers Award, celebrating the cities that paved the way by piloting the Quality of Life Index. Congratulations go to the pilot cities. Congratulations. Our pilot cities, Bhubaneswar, Kampala, Logan, Medina, Niche, Karataro, Quito, Udantani, and Vancouver. Your contributions have been essential in shaping an index that is truly centered on the needs of real cities. Congratulations once again on this award. Now we'd like to present another recognition, one that we like to call the Glow Up Award. This award goes to the cities that have completed both the global and local layers of their index implementation through exceptional proactive engagement, cities that truly turn vision into action. So now, congratulations go to our scale-up cities. Our scale-up cities, Amman, Hagoa City, Bologna, Kragujevac, Manta, and Nablus. Congratulations once again on completing the process. You can now use the index not only to track progress over time, but also to identify areas for improvement and take informed action. We have Akram from Amman live with us today, who also participated in our panel, who would like to say a few words in acceptance of the award. Akram, are you with us? Okay, I think we had some technical difficulties once again. We know he wanted to say something, but we'll have to move on. To our next award, we'd like to recognize a few cities for their outstanding commitment to storytelling. These cities truly stepped into the spotlight with confidence, transforming their quality of life work into compelling narratives, earning them the Storytelling Award. And to give you a taste of what they accomplished, let's take a look.
Como en pocos lugares, en Querétaro se mezcla el orgullo por la historia, por las tradiciones, por la identidad, con la modernidad y la visión de una ciudad del futuro con cada vez mejor calidad de vida.
بشكل عام يتلخص المفهوم في رضا السكان عن الأمن وجوانب الحياة الصحية والتعليمية، المجتمعية والاقتصادية والبيئية والترفيهية. وبالنسبة لسكان المدينة المنورة تحديداً، من المهم تحقيق جميع تلك المفاهيم والجوانب مع الحفاظ على هوية وسكينة المدينة.
Logan is the youngest, fastest growing and most diverse city in our state, and you can't move people or products throughout southeast Queensland without coming to our city. There is no other city in Australia that is 1/3 built. We have this incredible opportunity to work hand in glove with our community to design a city that their kids, their grandkids, their great-grandkids will enjoy for the next 200 years.
Love those videos. I'm sure you noticed the fascinating landscapes of Querétaro, Medina, and Logan in the videos we just shared. There is, however, one more city that deserves special recognition for its exceptional proactiveness in transforming its work into a story capable of winning hearts and minds. You'll discover who it is in our next video, also receiving a special mention Storytelling Award.
Hoy quiero hablarles no solo como alcalde, sino como un ciudadano más que ama profundamente esta tierra. Puerto Viejo no solo son sus calles, sus parques o sus edificaciones. Puerto Viejo es su gente, sus sueños, su trabajo diario, su esperanza. Y por eso nuestros proyectos como alcaldía no se enfocan únicamente en construir infraestructura, sino en algo mucho más esencial: mejorar la calidad de vida de cada puertorriqueño.
Mayor of Puerto Viejo, Javier Pince, has shared a strong vision of his city's involvement in the initiative. And here is his acceptance message.
Como alcalde, hoy quiero agradecer este reconocimiento internacional que recibe Puerto Viejo. El Storytelling Award nos inspira y confirma que vamos por la ruta del desarrollo. Con la iniciativa Calidad de Vida de ONU Habitat, hemos vinculado nuestra realidad con datos, escuchando a nuestra gente y tomando decisiones más inteligentes para mejorar los servicios y la vida de cada puertorriqueño. Cada indicador se ha convertido en acciones, espacios más seguros, movilidad más accesible y más oportunidades para nuestras familias. Este premio no es solo de la alcaldía, es de todo un cantón de quienes creen, participan y trabajan cada día por un Puerto Viejo que progresa con transparencia y planificación. Porque Puerto Viejo transforma los datos en calidad de vida y este reconocimiento nos impulsa a seguir creciendo juntos.
Thank you to the City of Puerto Viejo for their remarkable contribution in expanding the narrative of the Quality of Life Initiative, enriching it with their own stories, perspectives, and lived experiences. Now moving on to our next award, the Digital Excellence Award. It celebrates a private sector partner whose expertise has significantly expanded the initiative's possibilities and impact. And this outstanding partner is Veriset.
Thank you to the UN, Habitat, and the Quality of Life Initiative for this Digital Excellence Award. We are honored.
Veristet is proud to support an effort that centers people, well-being, and inclusion in urban development.
We believe that responsible data can play a meaningful role in ensuring that nobody is left behind.
Thank you again for this recognition and for the powerful mission we're proud to support.
Thank you again, and congratulations, Veristet. Moving on, we'd like to acknowledge our academic partners and our wider academia community of practice. Their contributions have been essential in shaping the intellectual foundations and the evidence base of the Quality of Life Initiative. To recognize this commitment, we created the Knowledge Award, celebrating the research that has strengthened the initiative's methodological backbone. We'd like to express our sincere appreciation to all of those who helped us build a solid conceptual foundation for this work. Among them, we'd like to highlight 3 key contributors. The International Society for the Quality of Life Studies, UN University, and our global urban lecturers. Francesco Sciarricino represents both partnerships with ISQUALS and is one of our global urban lecturers. And here he is to accept the award.
Hi, it is great to join you today to celebrate the Quality of Life Initiative, and I'm honored to receive the Knowledge Award. I wish to thank the UN Habitat, the Quality of Life program, and all the partners involved in the initiative. This award means a lot to me because the initiative, together with the community it gathered, managed to achieve something unique. It combined solid theoretical knowledge with multidisciplinary evidence and the know-how from local decision makers and the needs of their constituencies. This approach recognizes that quality of life is something important and tangible in our daily lives, and that it is carefully crafted day by day in our streets, neighborhoods, and communities. It is also testimony that when we want, we are able to come together for the collective good, overcoming our respective differences. I'm proud I could contribute to this initiative and to this community. My warmest congratulations also go to the International Society for Quality of Life Studies, with which I shared this prize, and to all those that are committed to improving urban quality of life around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francesco. For our final award, we want to acknowledge a group of civil society partners who truly deserve special recognition and our sincere thanks. For them, we created the Connector Award, dedicated to the organizations that brought cities together, scaled up engagement, and anchored the initiative firmly in local realities. And this award goes to our civil society networks and partner organizations. Thank you, Marmara Municipalities Union, UCLG MIWA, and Center for Territorial Intelligence. Thank you for being instrumental in onboarding cities, providing essential support to scale up the initiative, for encouraging meaningful participation, and for helping translate the index into local realities. We have now reached the end of our event and celebration, and it's time to wrap up. We'd like to thank you all for joining us and for being a part of this wonderful celebration. And we look forward to working and continuing our work together, strengthening our partnerships and advancing quality of life in cities around the world. Thank you. What does quality of life mean to you? In a rapidly changing world, how we define and design what constitutes a dignified quality of life is being reimagined in our cities and communities across the globe. The Quality of Life Initiative, led by UN Habitat, is creating a movement which seeks to put people's well-being, values, and priorities at the center of sustainable urban development. As we progress, we often forget to ask, do our policies and investments truly improve people's lives? What if we had an innovative tool to measure and guide progress, taking into account what people and communities value? Through global consultations and pioneering data collection techniques, UN Habitat is creating a new measurement tool that captures both objective and subjective factors that define quality of life. Our goal is not only to understand, but to improve urban quality of life, providing local leaders with the knowledge and tools needed for meaningful change. But this is a collective effort. Governments, cities, residents, and individuals all have a role in shaping the future of our communities to have a better economy, education, basic services, mobility, environment, housing, and culture, all supported by good governance and social cohesion practices. Join us in our mission to reimagine urban quality of life. Together, we can build a future where the planning and design of urban spaces is truly valuing what matters.